I'm Barbara Fulton. I'm the Director of Community and Organizational Development for Hayes Green Beach Memorial Hospital in Charlotte, Michigan. Part of my role in the hospital is to be involved in our community. We're about 20 minutes southwest of Lansing here in mid-Michigan. And in the community, there's a really incredible organization the acronym is wonderful, it's CAN-DO. It's actually our economic development group. It stands for Charlotte Area Networking for Development Opportunity. So this group is very collaborative. The people that come together at the meetings are all the right people. You get the stakeholders. It's the mayor, the city manager, the CEO of the hospital, the superintendent of the schools, business leaders, people who represent, I'm forgetting quite a few, but it's key stakeholders around the community. We decided we wanted to have a philanthropy discussion that would be really inspirational for the hospital. But as we looked at our community and how collaborative we are, we said, let's look at this in a very big way. Let's share a philanthropy resource with our whole community. We ended up bringing in a futurist, Leanne Kaiser Carlson, from Colorado actually, and it sparked something that connects back to this CAN-DO group and to the hospital. It sparked this year-long effort that has launched a community-wide generosity initiative. And it has several components, one of which is to become the most generous community in America, to look at ways that we can share our resources with each other and develop ways of inspiring, releasing more generosity in our community. And all that means, money, time, talent, care, so that we actually could demonstrate as a community that we've been able to increase the amount of generosity inside our community. If an individual is as healthy and has the greatest sense of well-being that they can have, they're going to be more engaged in their community. They're going to be able to be more engaged. They're going to feel better, and they're going to want to be a little more generous with their time, their talents. In the same way, if people are generous, it makes them feel better. It's kind of a wonderful cycle there, where there's a connection between health and well-being and your community engagement. So if you're really trying to create a vital, healthy community, you can't just take part of the puzzle. You can't just work on the health of your community. You have to look at how well are you supporting all the organizations within it. How charitable is your community? How much volunteerism is there? How much are you paying attention to the arts and education and all that makes a community vital, that makes people not just exist there, we don't want people to just have an address here. We want them to be engaged here. Generosity Project stemmed from both what was happening in our community, the combination of CAN-DOs, that leadership coalition I was talking about. It's really a commitment across the community that seems to be the right time. But it really came from Leanne Kaiser Carlson observing something about our community. She said something to us. She said, maybe does a fish know it's in water? It's something that it takes for granted. She said, maybe in your community, you just assume that every community is like this. Maybe you don't notice how different your community is right now in this. It is very generous. It is very much about focusing on how we can take care of each other. So when we're confronted with a problem like, the economy, the GM, whatever it is, we just begin to look at, what can we do together? On the one hand, it takes a certain critical mass of leaders to guide the project and to really embed it into everything we do. It can't be just something we talk about. Generosity is just a concept, but to what extent are we embedding generosity into our organizations? So, for example, the hospital's board has done a very bold and a very strong leadership position on generosity. They created a Power of One fund, which says at the end of every year, every fiscal year, at the bottom line, after everything else is said and done, whatever is left that year, which some years is a lot and some years is a little, but whatever that is, 1% of that goes to a generosity fund that seeds projects that will help inspire, celebrate, and create more generosity in our community. But the flip side is it also needs to be a grassroots, something that everybody feels. How can we help create that circle so that a person doesn't feel like they're just a recipient of generosity, but they're also able to be generous? You know, I might not be able to afford to put money into something, but maybe I could read to a child. For me, generosity is giving, following what you're passionate about in its most important sense. Generosity it's a personal journey. We do a lot of reactive generosity. People ask, I give, and I made a difference. They can become routine. They're not thoughtful, they're not mindful, they're not intentional. So for me, generosity is best when we've personally thought about it, ask ourselves some of those hard questions, and created an intentional path to follow. Then I think we can make the biggest difference. Generosity makes you feel like you belong. So someone that I don't even know could do something generous for me, and it creates a bond, a connection with that person. There's an affinity that comes from that. That's powerful. It's a community builder. Part of the generosity initiative is, on the one hand, how do you create more meaningful experiences for people who provide support? So that's one piece of it. And another is, how do you begin to measure generosity? If you look nationally, the generosity index is a financial measure, but generosity is a lot more than just money. And so we're also embarking on this bold idea of creating a new way to measure generosity. And the third part is the most generous community, really to just, as a community, just decide we're going to go down this road and become the most generous community in America. What a big idea. I actually have some things in my life that have I would describe as a sense of abundance. I'm a 3-time cancer survivor, but I feel a much greater sense of abundance in my life now than I ever did before I had cancer. You can have someone who is focusing on what they don't have in their life, and you can help them make a difference for somebody else, and you can help them feel like you can get them to really experience the difference they just made, and right in that moment they have a greater sense of abundance. Here we are in the middle of Michigan in this economy where we're all over the news. You know, we're last in this and we're last in that, and there's a real scarcity message being told. And in our community, for quite some time, we've been telling a different story. You know, we believe in the story of abundance, and it starts with a mindset shift. You know, you have to believe in the abundance before you can create it. You know. If you believe that resources are scarce, it doesn't mean that, I'm not suggesting that they're not. I'm not suggesting that there aren't data about employment and there aren't lots of people in this state who've worked for GM that are being affected. That is the truth of the data. What we do about it starts with a belief that there is abundance and that there's enough, that no matter how big the challenge is before us, it starts with a commitment and a leadership coalition that's already collaborating and a focus on community vitality. When you get those things in place, you don't run and hide. You don't wait for things to pass. You just soldier on, you set a target, and you work towards the greater good. So I feel like in the midst of all the media stories about Michigan, we are thriving with a mindset of, working towards the vitality of our community.